The Galactic Council was in session, a rare gathering of the most powerful and ancient species in the universe. Their grand chamber floated in the void, surrounded by the swirling colors of a dying star. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in their hovering seats, their forms varying from crystalline beings to creatures made of pure energy. The air hummed with telepathic murmurs, mechanical transmissions, and spoken words in languages older than the council itself. But today there was no routine discussion of trade routes or border disputes. Today, the chamber was filled with confusion and disbelief. At the center of the vast room, standing on the speaking platform, was an ambassador from the Vrax Dominion, a species known for their cold logic and tactical brilliance. Yet this ambassador, a tall creature with shimmering silver skin and 3 calculating eyes, was trembling. Members of the council, the Vrax ambassador spoke, his voice breaking through the murmurs. I come before you with a warning, a dire one. A ripple of amusement spread through the chamber. Warnings were common in the council, warnings about war, about rising empires, about dangerous new technologies. But the idea that the Vrax, a species that had never been defeated in battle, would stand here and warn the others, that was unheard of. The ambassador continued, his gaze darting between the gathered leaders. There is a world in the Sol system, a small, insignificant planet. We thought it would be easy to take, a simple conquest. He paused, his throat clicking. We were wrong. A deep, resonant laugh echoed through the chamber, coming from the massive form of a Drexorian warlord. His armored body shimmered with embedded plasma veins, and his mandibles clicked in amusement. Are you telling us your fleet was defeated by some primitive backwater world? He leaned forward, his many eyes narrowing. Tell us, Vraxian, what great power defends this planet? A hidden empire, a forgotten god. The ambassador's skin darkened in color, a clear sign of fear. No, he said. The planet is defended by its own inhabitants. They call themselves humans. The laughter stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than any force in the universe. Some representatives exchanged puzzled looks. Others pulled up holographic displays, scrolling through data. The name was barely known. Humanity was classified as a minor species, confined to their single world, with technology far below interstellar standards. A race still struggling with its own internal conflicts. Primitive, divided, weak. The ambassador raised a shaking hand and activated the central display. A hologram flickered to life, filling the chamber with a recorded transmission. Grainy, damaged, but still horrifyingly clear. The first image was of a massive fleet, the Vrax warships descending upon Earth like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Their weapons burned bright, striking at the planet below. Cities crumbled. Smoke and fire covered the world. But then, the retaliation began. The display shifted, showing the humans' response. Not advanced energy weapons, not planetary shields or fleets of equal power. No, the humans fought back with something far worse. Adaptation, ruthlessness, madness. They hijacked Vraxian technology, rewriting alien code in real time. They detonated nuclear weapons in their own atmosphere, sacrificing their own cities to take down warships. They sent pilots on suicide runs, laughing as they crashed into enemy cruisers. Their soldiers, wounded and dying, still fought with their bare hands, tearing apart Vraxian warriors as if their own survival was secondary to their rage. The chamber remained silent as the images played. A lone human soldier, covered in blood, stood atop the burning wreckage of a Vraxian commander's body. He raised his primitive projectile weapon and bared his teeth in a snarl. The ambassador deactivated the display. This was the last transmission we received before our entire invasion force was wiped out. A deep sense of unease settled over the council. It was not just that the humans had won. It was how they had won. No fear, no surrender, no logic, just pure, terrifying determination. The ambassador swallowed hard. We are the Vrax. We have conquered hundreds of worlds, fought countless wars. We have never known fear, until now. His voice dropped to a whisper. Earth is the most dangerous world in the universe. No one in the council laughed this time. The Vraxian High Command had never feared war. They had expanded their empire through conquest, crushing lesser civilizations with ease. Their fleets were vast, their technology centuries ahead of most species in the galaxy. They had fought against brutal warlords, against machines with no mercy, against hive minds that consumed entire planets. And they had always won. So when their scouts discovered Earth, a small blue-green world in the Sol system, they saw nothing but another easy victory. The inhabitants were primitive, still bound to their homeworld, their technology barely scratching the surface of interstellar travel. Their military was divided into factions, their weapons crude compared to Vraxian energy cannons and planet-scorching warships. There was no sign of a galactic alliance protecting them, no ancient guardian species watching over them. It would be the simplest invasion in Vraxian history. The fleet arrived in the shadow of Earth's moon, thousands of warships forming a blockade around the planet. Their generals issued a warning in every human language, broadcasting their message through radio waves, satellites, and even the humans' own primitive internet. Surrender now. Kneel before the Vrax dominion. Resist, and your species will be eradicated. The response was unexpected. There was no surrender, no desperate plea for mercy. Instead, the humans reacted. The turning point came when the humans did something that no other species had ever done. They boarded a Vraxian warship. No species had ever attempted such madness. Vraxian ships were fortresses, guarded by automated defenses, reinforced by energy shields. Yet somehow, the humans breached the hull, fought their way through corridors filled with elite Vraxian warriors, and hijacked a ship. A stolen alien warship, in human hands. When the Vraxian generals received the report, they refused to believe it. It was impossible. No species had ever adapted this quickly, learned alien technology this fast. Yet the proof was undeniable. Human engineers had ripped through the ship's code, overridden its security systems, and figured out how to fly it within hours. And then they turned its weapons against the Vraxian fleet. The invasion that was supposed to take days stretched into weeks. The High Command ordered reinforcements, throwing more ships, more troops, more firepower at the planet. But the humans only fought harder. The more they suffered, the more dangerous they became. And then, the moment of true horror arrived. The Vraxed High Command had always believed in total war. If a species refused to surrender, the answer was simple: eradicate them. They had done it before, turning rebellious worlds into glass, leaving nothing but lifeless wastelands behind. So, they gave the order. A planet-killer warhead was launched. A single bomb, designed to wipe out all life on Earth in an instant. A weapon that had never failed before. It never reached the surface. The humans shot it down. A species that had only recently begun to explore space, a species that had never fought an alien war before, had just done the impossible. They had intercepted and destroyed a Vraxian planet killer. And then, in response, they launched their own counterstrike. The Vrax did not understand at first. The humans had no planet killers, no weapons of galactic destruction, but they did not need them. They used what they had: a fleet of stolen Vraxian ships, nuclear warheads loaded onto hijacked alien cruisers, and a battle plan that made no tactical sense. The humans attacked without caring for their own survival. They crashed stolen ships into Vraxian command vessels. They detonated nuclear bombs in orbit, taking out entire sections of the fleet. Pilots flew their own crafts into enemy carriers, smiling as they turned into fireballs. Ground forces launched one final offensive, pushing the invaders off their planet, not just to survive, but to make the Vrax pay. And then, it was over. The Vrax fleet, once unstoppable, was broken. Their reinforcements were gone. Their commanders were dead, and the few survivors who escaped carried with them a message, one that would change the course of galactic history. Earth was not weak. Earth was not primitive. Earth was a death world. And humans were the most terrifying species the universe had ever seen. The surviving Vraxian commanders struggled to understand what had happened. They had fought against countless civilizations, some with superior technology, others with numbers so vast that even the Vrax had been forced to retreat. But never had they faced a species like this. Never had they encountered an enemy that fought with such reckless, unpredictable ferocity. It defied all logic. The humans were biologically unimpressive. Their bodies were fragile compared to the armored hides of the Drexorians. Their speed was inferior to the swift-moving Zilari, and their senses were weak when measured against the enhanced perception of the Onkai. Even their lifespans were short, mere decades compared to the centuries lived by most spacefaring species. And yet, they had done the impossible. The High Command demanded answers. The war had been a disaster, their fleet devastated, their forces humiliated. Scientists and tacticians combed through every record, every battle report, searching for patterns, weaknesses, anything that could explain the madness they had witnessed. The answer was more terrifying than they had expected. It was not their weapons that had saved the humans. It was not their technology. It was their minds. No other species in the known universe fought like humans. The Vraxian strategists studied the battle footage again and again. They watched how human soldiers adapted in real time, changing their tactics within minutes. They saw how their pilots performed maneuvers that should have been suicidal, dodging through enemy fire with precision that defied probability. They analyzed reports of human hackers infiltrating Vraxian systems, breaking through security that should have been impenetrable, rewriting alien code with terrifying ease. But the most disturbing reports were not about human technology or military strategy. They were about their psychology. The Vraxian Empire had always ruled through fear. They conquered worlds, crushed resistance, and made it clear that defying them meant extinction. It was how they had built their dominion, by ensuring that no species would ever dare rise against them. Fear was a universal truth. All intelligent beings feared death. All creatures, no matter how advanced, had an instinct for self-preservation. It was this instinct that made war predictable. Even the fiercest warriors, when faced with certain death, would retreat. They would surrender. They would submit. Humans did not. The footage told a story that should not have been possible. Wounded human soldiers refusing to be evacuated, instead choosing to keep fighting. Entire battalions launching counterattacks when outnumbered and outgunned. Individuals charging at heavily armed squads with nothing but a knife, or sometimes with nothing at all. And then there were the recorded transmissions, the last words of human fighters. Hold the line. If we go down, we take them with us. Tell my family I love them. Now hand me another grenade. You want Earth? Come and take it, you alien bastards. Even more disturbing was the laughter. Laughter in the middle of battle. Laughter as their cities burned. Laughter as they faced overwhelming odds. Some of it was wild and unhinged, but some of it was calm, almost as if the humans enjoyed the fight. The Vraxian researchers could not understand it. There was no evolutionary reason for such behavior, no logical explanation. A species should not laugh in the face of death. A species should not thrive in war. And yet, humans did. There were reports of prisoners taken during the invasion. Vraxian captors had tried to break them, interrogate them, understand them. It had not gone as planned. One human, after being captured, spent his time telling jokes to his guards. Another, when threatened with execution, simply shrugged and said, "Do it. My buddies are gonna kill you all anyway." The most unsettling case was that of a human pilot who had been brought aboard a Vraxian battleship for questioning. He had remained silent for hours, staring at his captors with an unnerving expression. Then, without warning, he grinned and said, "You should probably check your reactor core." Moments later, alarms blared across the ship. The human squadron had already infiltrated the vessel. They had come for him. It was not just their soldiers. Their civilians were just as terrifying. Stories spread of human engineers modifying stolen alien weapons in mere hours, medics turning battlefield injuries into makeshift cybernetic enhancements, farmers using outdated, century-old rifles to take down elite Vraxian warriors. The most frightening realization was the humans did not just survive war. They became stronger because of it. The longer the conflict lasted, the more dangerous they became. They learned faster, adapted faster, evolved faster. Pain made them fight harder. Loss made them more ruthless. Defeat only made them angry. The Vraxian High Command held a final meeting, reviewing all the data. Silence filled the chamber as the last report was read. Humanity does not fear death. They do not break. They do not surrender. They do not fight like any species we have ever encountered. Logic and reason do not apply to them. The High Commander himself, a veteran of 1,000 campaigns, sat in silence for a long time. He had seen countless enemies fall before the might of the Vraxian Empire. He had never known fear. But now, for the first time in his long life, he felt it. With a slow, shaking breath, he made his final declaration. The war is over. We must never return to Earth. The retreat of the Vraxian Empire was swift and absolute. Their remaining forces abandoned the Sol system, leaving behind the wreckage of their once mighty fleet. The few ships that survived limped back to Vraxian-controlled space, carrying only horror and humiliation. Humanity had done more than repel an invasion. They had shattered the illusion of Vraxian supremacy. Across the Empire, the news spread like wildfire. The Vraxian people, once certain of their unchallenged rule, now whispered in fear. Soldiers who had never known defeat spoke in hushed voices about the humans, their madness, their resilience, their terrifying refusal to surrender. The High Command, once unshaken by war, now held secret meetings, debating what should be done about the species that had proven itself far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. But fear did not stop with the Vraxians. The other great powers of the galaxy watched the war with growing dread. The Drexorian warlords, known for their brutal conquest of entire star systems, reviewed battle footage and saw something they had never encountered before. A species that fought harder when cornered. The Onkai, a species of ancient scholars who prided themselves on predicting the rise and fall of civilizations, recalculated their models, only to find that humanity defied all patterns. The Zilari, once considering humans beneath their notice, now refused to even speak of Earth. The Galactic Council convened once more, this time with every seat filled. Representatives of 100 species, some with empires stretching across entire arms of the galaxy, gathered to discuss a single question. What do we do about humanity? For days they debated. Some argued that Earth should be destroyed before it was too late, before humans could recover and expand beyond their homeworld. Others believed in containment, keeping them isolated, ensuring that no alien knowledge reached their hands. A few suggested diplomacy, an alliance. Perhaps, they reasoned, if humanity was brought into the galactic fold, their aggression could be controlled. The Vraxian ambassador, still shaken from the war, stood before the council with a grim expression. "We tried to conquer them," he said, his voice hollow. "We failed. And we did not fail because of their weapons. We failed because they do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They do not fear like us." The chamber fell into uneasy silence. The ambassador continued, his words slow and deliberate. "There is something wrong with them, something unnatural. We have encountered warlike species before. We have fought brutal warriors, savage conquerors, creatures that exist only to kill. But humans?" He shook his head. "They are something different. They do not just survive war. They become stronger because of it. They learn from it. They thrive in it." The Drexorian warlord, a massive creature with serrated armor plating, scoffed. "Then we must strike now, before they rebuild, before they spread beyond their world." A representative of the Onkai, her translucent form flickering with unease, replied in a soft but firm voice. "And if we fail? If we push them too far? What then?" The warlord growled, his mandibles twitching. "You suggest we do nothing, that we allow these things to grow unchecked." The ONK representative turned toward the Vraxian ambassador. "Tell them," she said. "Tell them what happened after your retreat." The ambassador hesitated, then sighed. "We left spies behind. Hidden agents, cloaked probes. We wanted to understand them, to know what kind of species could have done this to us." His three eyes darkened. "What we saw disturbed us." The chamber waited in silence. After we left, humanity did not celebrate. They did not rejoice in their victory. No, they prepared. Murmurs rippled through the council. The ambassador continued. "They are rebuilding at an alarming rate. Their nations, once divided, are now united with a single purpose: to never be caught unprepared again. Their governments are funding military projects at an unprecedented scale. Their scientists are reverse engineering our ships, our weapons, our technology. In mere months, they have advanced by decades." He took a deep breath, his voice dropping lower. "They are already planning for the next war." The murmurs turned into shouts. A representative of the Zilari, her insectoid form clicking in agitation, leaned forward. "And who do they plan to fight?" The Vraxian ambassador met her gaze. "Everyone." Silence. The ambassador looked around the chamber, his voice grim. "They now know they are not alone. They now know that the galaxy is filled with threats. And they have learned a terrifying lesson, that the only way to survive is to be the strongest." He let that sink in before speaking again. "We attacked them once. We forced them to evolve. And now, there is no turning back. We have created something we do not understand, something we cannot control." The Drexorian warlord clenched his massive claws. "So you do suggest we strike first?" The ambassador shook his head. "No, I suggest we stay away. As far away as possible. Let them remain on their world. Let them fight amongst themselves. But whatever we do, whatever happens," his three eyes narrowed, "we must never give them a reason to unite against us again." For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, there was no argument, no debate, just an unspoken agreement. The galaxy had seen war before. The galaxy had known conquerors, tyrants, and destroyers. But it had never seen humans, and it was not ready for what they would become. The galaxy moved on. Years passed. The Vraxians, once feared as the greatest military force in the known universe, quietly withdrew from expansion. Their fleets, once unmatched, were no longer sent to conquer but to defend. Their empire still stood, but the fire that had fueled their dominance had dimmed. There was no official statement, no declaration of surrender, only silence when it came to Earth. The other species followed suit. The Drexorian warlords, once eager for battle, turned their focus inward. The Onkai, masters of strategy and prediction, altered their galactic models and removed Earth from their projections. The Zilari, the traders and diplomats of the stars, quietly erased humanity from their maps. It was an unspoken agreement, a silent rule. Do not go to Earth. Do not provoke the humans. Let them be. But something unexpected happened. Despite their efforts to ignore humanity, despite their attempts to let Earth fade into obscurity, whispers still spread. Whispers of what humans had become. They were no longer the fractured species that the Vraxians had first encountered. The war had changed them, forced them into something new. Nations that had once fought amongst themselves now stood as one. Rivalries had been set aside. Humanity was no longer divided by flags or ideologies, but bound by a single purpose: to never be weak again. Their technology advanced at an unprecedented rate. What had taken other species centuries to develop, humans achieved in mere decades. They reverse-engineered Vraxian hyperdrives, Drexorian armor, ancillary energy shields, improving them beyond recognition. What they could not steal or modify, they built from scratch, pushing past limitations that had once seemed impossible. Their fleet, once non-existent, grew in secret. Massive shipyards orbited Earth, hidden by electromagnetic fields and sensor distortions. Thousands of warships, sleek and deadly, were being constructed, each one more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans did not expand beyond their system, not yet, but every species knew it was only a matter of time. And then there was their military. The soldiers who had once fought with desperation and instinct were now trained killers, honed into something more dangerous than any bioengineered warrior or cybernetic soldier. Their tactics, once unpredictable, were now precise, refined. They studied every battle, every war ever fought, not just by their own kind, but by every species in the galaxy. They learned, adapted, evolved. Yet, despite all this, the humans remained silent. They did not send emissaries. They did not ask to join the Galactic Council. They did not seek revenge against the Vraxians. They simply watched and waited. This terrified the other species more than anything. A warlike species that waged constant battle could be understood, predicted, countered. But a warlike species that remained patient, that prepared for war without rushing into it, that was something new, something dangerous. The tension in the galaxy grew. Rulers and leaders across countless worlds whispered the same question in private chambers. What are the humans waiting for? That question was answered sooner than expected. It started with a distress signal. A colony at the far edge of the galactic rim, a world insignificant in the grand scheme of things, barely populated, barely worth notice. The signal was weak, desperate, the kind of distress call that most species ignored. A new threat had emerged. They were called the Kurel, a species unknown to the Galactic Council, an empire from the void beyond the mapped galaxy. They did not negotiate, did not communicate. They arrived in silent fleets of blackened metal, stripping entire planets of life. Their weapons shattered moons, their soldiers were relentless, their purpose unknown. Worlds fell before the Galactic Council could even react. The mightiest fleets were torn apart like paper. The most advanced defenses crumbled in hours. The Kurel did not take prisoners. They did not leave survivors. They simply erased entire civilizations. Panic spread. The Council convened, desperate for a solution. They had no answer. Then, an emergency transmission was received. It was not from a member of the Council. It was from Earth. The humans had been watching. They had seen the Kurel consume world after world. And now, they had decided to speak. A single message was transmitted across the entire Council. We are deploying our fleet. Do not interfere. No negotiations, no alliances, no requests for permission. Just a statement. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council witnessed the full might of humanity. Their ships emerged from the void, not in scattered formations, not in confused desperation, but in perfect, terrifying unity. Their hulls gleamed with unfamiliar alloys. Their engines burned with energy signatures the Council had never seen before. Their weapons were not just deadly. They were designed to kill things that should not be able to die. The Kurel met them in battle. The war that followed lasted 6 days. 6 days. That was all it took. The Kurel, a species that had brought the galaxy to its knees, were wiped from existence. Entire fleets vanished. Planets once claimed by the invaders were returned to silence. Human ships did not just destroy. They hunted. Every last Kurel ship was found. Every last soldier was eliminated. There was no surrender, no retreat. Humanity had decided that this enemy would not be allowed to exist. And then, as suddenly as they had arrived, the humans withdrew. No message, no demands, no declarations of power. They simply left. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. The Kurel had been unstoppable, and the humans had erased them in less than a week. The message was clear. Humanity had not been waiting for war. They had been waiting for a worthy enemy. The aftermath of the war against the Corel left the galaxy in a state of silent unease. The unstoppable force that had torn through civilizations like dry leaves had been obliterated in mere days, not by the combined might of the Galactic Council, but by a single species: the humans. The Galactic Council should have been relieved. Humanity had saved them, after all. Entire worlds had been spared. Empires that had been teetering on the edge of collapse were still standing because of them. The logical response should have been gratitude. But there was no celebration. There were only whispers. It wasn't just that humanity had won. It was how they had won. There had been no drawn-out battles, no desperate counteroffensives. Humanity had studied the Corel, identified their weaknesses, and erased them. The war had not been a struggle. It had been a purge. And that was terrifying. The Drexorian warlords, once champions of bloodshed, reviewed battle footage in silence, their claws tightening around the hilts of their ceremonial weapons. They had always considered themselves the ultimate warriors. Now they understood the truth. They were children playing with sticks. The Onkai, masters of strategy, tried to process the speed of humanity's war. Their predictive models failed. Every assumption they had made about how wars were fought, how civilizations engaged in conflict, had been proven wrong. The Zilari, the traders and diplomats, tried to open communications with Earth. They sent offers of alliances, trade agreements, treaties, anything to understand what humanity wanted. They received no response. That was the most unsettling part. Humanity had not asked for anything. No demands for tribute, no claims to conquered territories, no insistence on ruling the Galactic Council. They had simply left. It was as if the war had been an inconvenience, nothing more. The Council convened in desperation. The same question was on everyone's minds, but none dared to speak it aloud. What happens when humanity finds another enemy? They had seen what humans did when they fought to survive. They had now seen what humans did when they fought on their own terms. And there was something worse. It was not just their military. It was their growth. Their technology had advanced at an absurd rate. After the Vraxian invasion, humanity had gone from a fragmented world to a unified power in mere decades. After the war with the Corel, their fleets had tripled in size. Their weapons had evolved again, pushing beyond even the most advanced alien designs. What should have taken millennia had taken them a handful of years. And then came the real horror. For all their power, for all their might, humans had still been holding back. The Vraxians had seen the first glimpses of this during their failed invasion. The Corel had seen the full force of human warfare, but something still felt wrong. Humanity had fought like an apex predator, yet there was something unnatural about it. It wasn't just strategy. It wasn't just technology. It was instinct. The Drexorians, a species born for war, reviewed footage of human soldiers in battle. What they saw disturbed them. Humans did not hesitate. They did not flinch. They did not waver. Where other species calculated, humans reacted. Where others planned, humans adapted. It was almost as if war was not something they learned. It was something they were. The Onkai tried to analyze it, to explain it. They searched history, traced humanity's past, and they saw a pattern. Humanity had never known peace. Other species had risen in times of prosperity, developing arts, culture, philosophy before ever encountering war. Humanity was the opposite. From the moment they stood upright, they had fought. Against nature, against each other, against threats both real and imagined. Every moment of their history had been defined by conflict, by struggle, by survival. Their greatest advancements had come from war. Their greatest heroes had been warriors. Their entire existence had been forged in battle. And worst of all, they had been holding back. The Corel had been their first true test against an external enemy, a war where humanity had not fought from desperation, but from dominance, A war where they had used only what they needed to win. The Council knew the truth now. Humanity had never needed to expand before, never needed to conquer. They had been content on Earth, squabbling among themselves, fighting their own battles. The Vraxian invasion had changed that. It had forced humanity to evolve. The Corel War had pushed them further. And now, humanity had tasted what it was truly capable of. The question was no longer what will humanity do. The question was when will they do it? And there was no answer. Because for the first time, the galaxy had encountered something it could not predict. Not a tyrant, not an empire, not a conqueror, but something worse. A species that had never stopped evolving. A species that had never been tamed. The galaxy was silent. Not in the way that space was always silent, a vast emptiness between stars. No, this was different. This was the silence of something watching, waiting. After the war with the Corel, after humanity had shown its true potential, the great empires of the galaxy did not celebrate their survival. They feared it. They feared what humanity had become. More than that, they feared what humanity would do next. But the strangest thing happened. Nothing. Humanity did not expand. Their warships, now the most advanced in the galaxy, remained within their own borders. Their soldiers, their fleets, their terrifying weapons, all stayed within the Sol system. The humans were not colonizing new worlds, not subjugating weaker species, not taking advantage of their newfound superiority. They were waiting. And no one knew why. Some believed they were planning, gathering their strength for some unknown conquest. Others thought they were preparing for another war, expecting a retaliation that would never come. A few, the most desperate optimists, hoped that humanity had seen enough destruction and simply wished to be left alone. The truth, as always, was far worse, because humanity was not waiting out of hesitation. They were waiting because they knew something that the rest of the galaxy did not. They had discovered the signal. It had been faint, almost imperceptible, buried beneath cosmic radiation, pulsing in patterns too complex for any known species to recognize. But humans had recognized it. Their scientists had spent decades studying it, deciphering its meaning. And when they did, for the first time in their history, they hesitated, because the signal had not come from the Corel. It had not come from any empire known to the Galactic Council. It had come from something else. Something old. Something vast. Something that had been watching all of them. The humans had not shared this knowledge with the rest of the galaxy. They had not sent warnings, had not called for alliances. Because deep in their bones, they understood something no other species did. They understood what it meant to be hunted. And the signal was not a greeting. It was not a distress call. It was not a warning. It was a response. Something out there had heard them. Something that had been listening for a very, very long time. And now, it was coming. Humanity had always been a species that prepared for war. Always been a species that adapted to survive. The Vraxians had taught them how to fight as one. The Corel had taught them how to win. But this was something new. This was not a war for territory. This was not a war for survival. This was a war against something beyond survival. The humans did not tell the galaxy because they knew what would happen. The others would panic. The Council would argue, delay, waste precious time pretending diplomacy was an option. The Drexorians would rush into battle blindly. The Onkai would try to calculate an impossible victory. The Zilari would seek escape where none existed. No, this was not a fight for politicians. This was not a fight for them. This was a fight for the only species built for war. Humanity had always been different. Stronger when wounded, smarter when cornered, deadlier when threatened. And now, for the first time, the galaxy would finally see why. Because the real war was about to begin. And the most dangerous species in the universe was ready.